You're listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Now, it is time to break it down.
Welcome to episode number 39 of the Sonny Brown Breakdown. I'm your host, Sonny Brown, and in this episode, I talk to Priit Mihkelson and Andy from School of Grappling. The episode takes on a unique debate-style format on the topic of offense versus defense, with Andy taking the side of offense and Priit being on the defensive side. With the issue being reasonably broad, it takes some interesting turns from a general conceptual overview of the topic to practical applications of technique and the learning and teaching of grappling. So even though it was a debate-style format with Preet versus Andy, both guys had fun with this subject. They both enjoy each other's work, so it was very good-natured, and they enjoyed it, and I'm sure you will too. If you would like to see another one in this style, there was some talk of that towards the end, please just let us know on my email, which is sonnybrown@gmail.com, or Instagram, Sonny Brown Breakdown, or Facebook, and also iTunes reviews. We're at about 32 at the moment, so I would love to get that up to 50. If you guys could drop some 5 stars on there, that'd be much appreciated. And without any further ado, let's get to the debate. Welcome to the inaugural grappling debate, gentlemen, where we'll be separating the Bushido from BJJ, the junk from Jiu-Jitsu, the nonsense from no-gi, and the muck from martial arts. I'm joined today by 2 previous guests on the podcast, 2 absolute legends. We've got Priit Mihkelson. Priet, how are you today, mate?
I'm good. Early morning, 11. So but I'm considering all that, but I'm good. I have my coffee and I'm ready to go.
That's what we like. A bit of coffee, a bit of hot cup of joe to get things started. And coming out of the other corner is Andy from School of Grappling. Andy, how's things?
Awesome. Everything is pretty good. And even earlier morning here, it's 10 a.m. So I already won on that front, I guess.
Okay. All right. So the idea, I guess, you guys have had a discussion privately about the benefits and merits of offense versus defense, in particular to jiu-jitsu training. And, we're going to spend the next hour or so hashing it out as to what you think is better or should be prioritized. I'll let you guys figure out where you go from there. Is that roughly correct?
I guess we didn't really discuss anything yet. We just agreed that we would like to discuss it, and that's why we're here now.
If there's nothing's been discussed yet, then I think coming out for team offense, setting the pace and putting Preet on the back foot. Andy, what do you have to say to start things off?
All right. First of all, I have really quick question for you. Is it correct that I'm the first 3-time guest on your podcast?
You know what? It's actually you and Preet both, because Preet's been on twice. Oh. You've been on twice, so you guys are both the third time. So definitely regulars, and
yes.
I'm all the happy for it.
So we are like your core podcast guests, I guess.
So.
All right.
I guess yeah.
So sadly, I didn't win on that front. So we are both the first 3-time guests on your podcast. So I'm greatly honored and happy to be the first 4-time guest. Maybe then I'll give it another shot. All right. So I guess I'll start with the initiative, which is fitting for this whole discussion since I'm coming from the office side of things. And maybe for a little bit of context for the listeners, I give you a rough outline how this all came to be, so to say. And sometime in February, I guess, I posted some of Priit's works. I think it was some clips where I talked about the importance of wrestling and how to incorporate it and stuff. And actually, what I wrote, I'm paraphrasing, is that I think me and and Priit, we highly resonate with most stuff we talk about when it comes to the technical side of Jiu-Jitsu or grappling, and even many of the teaching methodologies and stuff. And I wrote, however, there's one thing we highly disagree on, I feel like, and that is I put way more emphasis on offense than defense. And I guess Priit it's safe to say that he is more known for his views on defense. Yeah, and I said that because I felt like, just like a good scientist, it's pretty boring to discuss the stuff we always agree on. That's not how people kind of gain new knowledge, but it's way, way, way more fun and beneficial to talk about stuff people seemingly disagree on. And yeah, that's why we're basically here, because Priit then wrote me a message and said, hey, maybe let's just discuss this. Maybe we don't disagree that much or can find common ground. And sorry for the drama, guys. I know that people in the Jiu-Jitsu community love drama, but I suspect we will find quickly some common ground because I have a feeling, yeah, we will see. All right. So that's like the stage is set, I guess. So first of all, I want to point out that I think we both aren't that stupid to say that only offense or defense is important, but I think we both agree on that every skillful practitioner in any combat sport has to know and be skillful in both offense and defense. So this is basically, for me, just a discussion what is more important, so to say, or what is primary. And to make my point why offense I think is more important, I will come from two perspectives now. The first question is, what came first, the weapon or the shield? And just historically, it's pretty obvious that the weapon, maybe in these times it was a spear or maybe a club or something, came hundreds of thousands of years before the first shield got invented. And that is because the shield is just a response to the sword. You have to understand what can hurt you, what the where you have to protect yourself, from what you have to protect yourself. And in that sense, the weapon, or in that case, let's just call it the sword as a archetype for all offensive weapons, had to be first for the shield actually to evolve and to become important at some point. And another point, if we just look at this duality of sword and shield, just ask yourself what is carried in your primary hand, in your right hand for most people. It's the sword. The shield is carried in your left hand, in your less important hand, so to say. That should already tell you what's more, where the humans naturally see the greater importance, so to say. And even then, just imagine when the shield actually evolved, it also disappeared again. We saw that shields first became smaller and smaller, like the small bucklers we see in the Renaissance, and eventually the shields completely disappeared, and the saber, the rapier, or the longsword, the two-handed longsword, became the weapons of choice of the people because they learned to incorporate the defense in their offensive weapons. And I think that's actually maybe where this all will converge on finding a common ground between offense and defense. So that's like the first point I want to make. Just think about the sword and shield from a more real martial combative context. And the second point I want to make is chess, because I feel like chess is a very good archetype for every combat that is concerned about space and time. And all combat is a game of space and time, and probably also in real combat a battle of energy. But at the lowest level, it's a game of space and time, and that's what chess is. So in chess, there are a lot of terms, I think, that are very useful for general thoughts about tactics and stuff. And the first one is initiative. So initiative, everybody knows kind of what initiative is. But I just wanted to point out that initiative is in chess when the one player cannot ignore the threats the other player opposes to him, and he has to respond. And that's why it's said that White starts off with initiative in chess, because he makes the first move. So by making the first move, he gained a tempo. Tempo is like a measure of time in chess. It's like the amount of turns you did, or of beneficial turns. And just by starting off, by being the guy who attacks, so to speak, White wins around 55% of the matches. So chess is not a game at the highest level that's 50-50, White and Black, but actually more like 55 to 45. And White, it is said that White has the advantage because it has the initiative, and it always is one up on tempo. So it's like we start off with more time to do our stuff. And a really simple idea maybe to see how that is important in like combat, for example, if we look at boxing and I jab you have to respond. I mean, your response can be manifold. It can be you can block, you can parry, you can evade, maybe you can even counter attack, but you have to respond in some way, because if you don't, you just get hit. And that's also kind of what is meant by the idea of Zugzwang, or which is roughly, I mean, I think it's even Zugzwang. It's a German word, but it's also a word in English language in chess, I guess. And Zugzwang is the same thing. It's like it's forcing the opponent to do something and effectively wasting a move. And this is something that not always is actually beneficial. There are situations in chess where that's a bad thing, but in general, that's only a thing that the offensive player can attain, the idea of making your opponent do something he actually doesn't want to do. And I guess so in many ways what Black actually tries to do in chess is to either hope that White makes a mistake and loses tempo, so Black can gain the initiative and win, or to eventually launch a counterattack, but a counterattack again is offensive. And I guess that is like my opening, so to say, if we keep the chess language. And I'm very happy to speak to Priit, and I'm very curious what he has to say, and let's keep this going.
Very interesting. So, Priit?
It was really nice to see. It's a different podcast than usual.
Already, yeah.
But I would say, Andreas, you're wrong. No, I actually no. It's a good Estonian joke, you know. So I agree with you. So I guess my point is, and people should concentrate on something, and we'll see where how I go around this and where I end up with this. But my idea is it's understudied, and very egoistically, it's easier to make a name for yourself when you study something that's understudied, and you can get ahead, and you can have more, so to speak, valid opinions about it. And I don't think I did it consciously, like let's study defense. I was just interested because I couldn't give my students good answers, so I was kind of bothered by it. So that kind of a little bit pushed it. Clearly, I think offense is necessary, and I love sports, and I hate the passivity that you would see in IBJJF and stuff, people walking backwards. And I enjoy the rules and pressure, and it's a weird dichotomy that you can pressure more if you have a good defense, you actually are more aggressive. So, and I also enjoyed, the spear and what came first, and spear and shield. And it's I got awesome analogies. And I don't know how to like put it in that way that you are actually, I know you guys agree that you're actually more aggressive when you know your defense is solid. That means that how deep you would have to go to the defensive side, and what would have to be the level of that you would reach your optimal level of aggression. Because if your defense is not solid, you will not be optimal. You would always hold back a bit or even overcommit, and that makes the risk a little bit too expensive. So how much time you should spend on defense, because I don't think it's 50-50, that defense 50 and attack 50. That I would say even like, I don't know, let's say, I'm not sure that this is the right comparison, but even with chess, that let's say attack would be differently. I give you the percents. It would be like 55 attacks and 45 defense. Maybe you spend it on that. And so that's kind of my reasoning, that I actually with some other podcast I said that I'm all about attack, because for attack to reach, attack always evolves to a certain level, and then I agree that defense comes in, with the shield and spear example, that attack evolves naturally to a certain level, and then it stops because there's no resistance anymore, because it works. And then people start to counter-study it, how to defend it. So for attack to really reach its full potential, even microscopic advancements, it needs resistance. It needs defense. And in that sense, I'm actually really honest about it when I say that figuring out the defense, how the defense could be the best it can be. We can reach better optimal results, potential when it's coming to attack. And we can weed out not working attacks, because the defense has the ability to do that. It's not going to be like one is left, like let's talk about far side armbar from side control. It's not like one version is left, but we would definitely have fewer versions left if the defense would be optimal. And then we could spend our time practicing those fewer options of far side armbar. Then our time would be better spent. We could get better faster. We could get better at good things. And our sport level also could go higher, because we have fewer things to practice. We can get better at those things. And so that's also why the defense, I think it's necessary. And I'm more known for it, I guess, yeah. And I talk about it, and I guess I don't think you guys do it, but I guess the simple assumption is like, oh, Preet doesn't like offense, or Preet doesn't attack at all. So that would be really like a jumping a gun, and would be really how to say it, like I don't know if the word far-fetched is a good example of English language, but it would be wrong to presume that I don't know that people say, oh, but why don't you only do defense so deeply that you go so deep. So I would think that if people would think like why I would do that, and what is the message. And also there's a sacrificing part of Estonian nation as a suffering, that I like to suffer. So to keep up with all the traditions. So that's like a joke part of this, and kind of true. And I like to find out so others would not have to. So we can move on faster, because I think we're kind of hindering ourselves So somebody has to take that step and go figure it out, so everybody would have a better information. I think there's more people doing that. It's not only me, but in that sense. But to have a better information, so actually we could go faster forward. And I don't know what's the scientific literature says about going so to speak backwards to go forward. And I think it's it's a weird paradigm. I think when you look at the line, there's a zero and you can go positive, negative from the lateral space. Then I think if you only go left, I don't think you can reach your potential. We have to go mutuals, kind of like expanding both sides. And so that's what I already talked about. So it seems like, and also I'm very addicted to it because I'm getting good at this. So I want to do it more. And so it's like a rabbit hole chase a little bit, that I'm in comfortable zone. So I want to, talk about it more because I know about it. So it will start to feed itself, so to speak. But that's the overall idea that I would say I'm interested of how to attack better. And what we have seen, if I would close up the thought, and then we can go on. What I've seen is also, if people attack me, their timing gets better. They will adapt. They weed out certain attacks, certain things they just cannot do. And actually, I would consider, in that sense, when I also do examples to people, is when you throw a jab, if your defense sucks, the jab has 10-second working time window, and that's not realistic. If you watch other sports, it's not going to be a 10-second window for a jab. The jab is a split second, and you have to set it up and everything else. So what it seems like my idea and my defense is creating is narrowing down the actually timing, that if you think about a Spectre far armbar, and the Spectre is like 45 degrees of timing, you figure out that 45 is like a timing, and then it's like, okay, timing, accurate timing is actually, let's say, in certain degree, but without the good defense, you will never find out the best degree, those timings. So I think the defense helps to narrow it down. And then the attacks will start to work like in boxing. In that sense, you only have a split second to attack, and then it's gone. And that pushes our sport to become more aggressive, more precise, and more fighting. And I think it's overall better. And it transcends more to MMA also after that, I think, because we just have less time to stall. We have to push the pace. And you would see that in wrestling and boxing and stuff. So they don't have time. So that would be my beginning thoughts.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's way too civilized here. We already agree on so much.
Well, let me put it to you then, Andy. I very good points there from Preet. And what I took from that is a strong point that it is actually defense that drives the evolution of offense. And that's what pushes offense forward. And without that development of defense, then offense will never reach its true potential. Is that what would you say to that?
I would say that's 100% correct. I think it's really, like, without getting too spiritual, it's always two sides of the same coin. There's a, let's say, dialectic relationship between offense and defense. It's like we need better defense, like Priit said, to get better offense. And in return, we need better offense to get better defense. And in many ways, that's how actual progress is achieved. Even in science or in politics is we have a theory, then it gets attacked strong, then it has to make its point stronger. And this is like an ongoing, sometimes even infinite cycle of progress, let's say. And that's actually why I think Priit is really important for the jiu-jitsu community, especially because he's right. Defense was understudied in many ways, and he begins to kind of shift the paradigm a bit more to study it more, or maybe take it more seriously. And that's why I'm really thankful because I use Priit stuff. So I'm not that interested naturally in defense, but I'm happy that we have, let's say, a grappling scientist who delves into these things, and I can see what he comes up with and test it out and see if it makes sense. And so far, most of it makes a lot of sense to me, and then I will incorporate it in my own training. And so that's what I meant with we basically agree on most stuff. But to get back to the point why I think this whole question, the egg or the hen, comes first when it comes to offense and defense, I maybe would like to give an example how I structure my classes when it comes to that. And maybe because, like, I think Priit and me, we're both kind of known for talking not only about technique, but also about how we learn or teach stuff. And maybe Priit can say something to that then, and maybe if he does it similarly or disagrees or whatever. So what I like to do, if I have like a topic or something I teach, is I usually take my time, like depending on the topic, 4 to 8 weeks maybe, of just this position, let's say, or situation. And what I like to do, because I'm a big believer that intention is absolutely important if we learn anything, is I firstly start off with offense. Let's say back attacks, because they are important and Priit is known for his back defense stuff. I actually start off strongly with the offensive side, because I want all the students, especially the new ones, to understand the offense, the stuff they can do to win, basically. And I actually even start off from the end. So I start off with finishes, because I feel like, in speaking about intention, especially a beginner has to know why he does something. And because he doesn't know a lot, I start off with the end. I tell him, let's say, imagine you got on somebody's back. Let's imagine that you have the skill. How would you finish him? And then I start off with strong finishes, and then I build backwards. Like, okay, now you have the, let's say, the trust in your abilities that you can finish somebody if you got the back. Then we speak about, okay, how do I get to the back? Then we go more backwards and practice, okay, how can I set up the back take, and so on. So I start with the offense and I start teaching backwards. And this whole idea of teaching backwards is obviously not something I invented. It's very common. Many coaches do it. And then after some, let's say, weeks of really sharpening the sword, so to speak, and I see that that people get better offense, and I want them to have success. That's why I don't start with defense. I want them to build trust that they can actually finish people. Plus, I want them to actually develop a sense of fear about the stuff. So I actually want people to get choked out a lot in the beginning. And then when I have the feeling, okay, the people kind of sharpened the sword, they also fear the sword, then I start incorporating the defense. And then we really hone into the defense. And then we discuss, okay, how now I know what are like the things I do to finish somebody. So now I can reverse engineer how I can stop that. But I still have like a sense of fear that I have to stop it also. And then I build up the defense afterwards. And then things get actually kind of interesting, and then the whole class structure shifts a lot more into like positional sparring and situational drills and games and sparrings, because then actually people have now the sword in their right hand and the shield in their left, and we actually can start building up the actual skills you would need in an actual fight, and then things get interesting. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to throw in there.
So do I answer now? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know this is a topic you certainly enjoy, Preet, so it'd be good to go back and forth on this.
I was just thinking about the structure. That do you speak between and then I take over, or can we have a dialogue?
Have a dialogue.
Yeah.
Maybe if I start to a little bit too much attack, and then you're gonna calm me down, maybe.
I think so.
Okay, all right.
I'll just keep everyone settled.
Yes. Anyway, interestingly, I have to agree because that's how we have so far structured our 3 months beginners course, because we mostly teach them submissions, because it's easier for them to relate to it, because if they've seen it probably in UFC and stuff, so they like to train UFC stuff. So that's the not important reason to do that, but also the what already was said, that they need to understand what's the end goal, and they need to be, and we do a lot of let's say progressive resistance drills, let's say in armbar, then arm is straight, then other beginner is struggling, and you do progressive resistance, so to find a tap, so other person learns to be calm but responsible and not freaking out in a submission, and then tapping, and that's also a good lesson. Another person learns to control the lock in the end range and not freak out. So there's that whole process that's necessary, and people can relate to it, because I agree, if you start to teach like half guard passing in a beginner's course, then nobody even knows why you need that, and they don't have context. So I would say, I haven't taught beginners courses for some time because we have other coaches, but I would say half of them, so we do 3 months and twice a week. So half of the classes, a little bit even more maybe, is submissions. So because we added all guillotines, darces, Achilles, knee bar, and we've moved towards that way because we see the better results, and the people do know when to tap and to what to tap. Because even earlier days, we didn't have darces in our beginners courses, and then they come to the next group and somebody darts them, and sometimes it can be a crank, and they don't know what it is, and they suffer, and next morning their neck hurts, and then it's a bad feeling. So that's the reasoning we also started, that I want them to be safe, to know when to tap. And I also, so that's, I can agree that it makes sense to start teaching it from the end, and I do it with a lot of things. I actually teach passing backwards. I start from like a knee slide. I start basically from side control, end position, and then how to keep somebody there, and then I put them ankle in, and then I put their knee in, and so I work backwards, and I'm still amazed that it's taught actually forwards in most cases, and it makes it super complicated because there's like 6 fights happening through that pass, and then it makes it super hard to teach forward actually. So the backwards method, teaching submissions, and also weird thing that I haven't let's say acknowledged the stage or level of people, but we also have done one test, and I've done it. I've taught defense through offense, and I know my fellow black belt Ronald has done the DARS classes, DARS Anaconda, and all this front seat belt, Peruvian neckties, guillotines. He did that, but also I hope I'm not lying now, but we have done, but those if you teach Anaconda, DARS, and Peruvian necktie, guillotine, let's say, you would have to, our experience is you would have to move on with those submissions quite fast actually, because people get bored. Because if you get too much success doing, let's say, the DARS, because the defense is lacking, the motivation drops actually surprisingly pretty fast, because people have a feeling, oh, I know this shit. And then it's not a bad thing. That's the good thing to change. And then you have DARS, Anaconda, guillotine, Peruvian necktie, and then you have a front seat belt game, kind of, let's say, submission game. And it's actually fun to do it fast, and people have context. And then you start to have defense. And then like a second stage of submission learning happens, because then you just, even without fixing anything with anacondas and darces, you just start to do the defense. And then people's, those eyes will light up again, because the submission rate of finishing, let's say, darces and stuff are like drastically lowers. And then their motivation to figure it out, and how I beat this, how I beat that. And it's really interesting stage that people discover that, well, I can train this submission even for a month and maybe even more. And it's always interesting because they like the resistance. So even I would say the first stage of learning submission is, yes, I agree that you have to do it. But then actually it's only smart defense that pushes it to, like, you have to do it. Even the shortest stage would be, I want to introduce you the darce as a submission, progressive resistance, to understand how it works, and they struggle a bit, so it's a tight grip. And then right away, just make, to keep the motivation up, don't even wait for the maybe attacker motivation to drop, would introduce the right defense, correct defense.
Yeah.
And that pushes it, that keeps the motivation up for both. And actually only teaching the defense, the attacker will adjust by itself and learn so many things. And we have done it twice, I think, in our gym with anacondas and stuff, and with something else also, I don't know what it was, that we only taught like basically 2 months defense against those darce and anacondas. And everybody's anacondas and darces got, like, I'm not saying super good and whatever, world class, but they got way, way better. And after 2 months, we actually trained both things. But usually when I've done attacking, then after 2 months, it's not the same result that the defense is good than attacking, because the defense is harder to figure out by itself. And attack is somehow easier to figure out on a go, even for beginners. And it's a strange effect that, so that's what comes to also to the point that Andreas was saying about, I want to take the defense and, and just don't spend much time on it, or, not in a good way, and just develop my offense. So that's what I find with the defense, because it's so understudied that the information is not optimal in very, very many cases. And even defense reactions are, I would say, even sometimes bad. And so I don't like those answers. And I would love to have a ready answer for people. If, okay, what about back defense? That's what we're developing at the moment, having a new twist on things, and actually they seems to work better. And I can just take a bundle. Okay, those are back escapes. And now right away, it's easy to teach, very easier to get good at those. So you can still start to play a really good, shield sword game, that one is attacking, one is defending, but then both are optimal. But I find that without me doing the research, or other people doing the good research, to have bundles that I can just present and go, that usual defensive answers are sometimes bad, and then the learning process is not optimal, because defense is not figured out and offense is figured out, and then it's not more equal fight, even 55-45 like in chess, that somebody attacks, somebody defends. It's actually bigger, that the defender may be losing like 60-70% of time, and then we know that attacker in some point loses also interest, that I know this. So and my experience says people will not figure out the defense as fast as offense on their own if they're put in a drilling situation. And I really enjoy that if I can, with darces and let's say with anacondas we did last year, that I can give them the bundle and they can just work, and then I work with them and it gets better. And so it becomes easier for them, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's people can just develop their offense because that's what they want to do, but giving them right away good information in defense helps them to do that, because eventually they want to develop offense. And I feel that people don't want to spend that much time I feel the resistance also, not in my gym in that sense, but overall, that people are not willing to spend as much time developing defense as much are they spending time developing offense in their game. And it's very, very often I hear that they're not interested of defense. I want to develop offense, and they just would like to have a better answers towards defense because clearly they're interested, but they don't see a value of the developing and going deep themselves to figure it out. And their answer is, oh, I just want to make my offense way more better so I don't have to deal with my lacking knowledge of defense, you know. And I think it helps till a certain point, but it's hard to go on after if you don't go deeper in defense. So, but I find it's not sexy enough to develop. And I hope to show people that it's actually fun to play with that, and it's not so boring and can be as sexy as developing attacks.
Yep. I mean, I think I absolutely agree that defense doesn't come as naturally as offense, and that's a good point you make. That while we should maybe focus more on spending more time there because it's just not as intuitive. I just wanted to go back and point out, just to make sure that even when, like I said, when we start off by practicing offense backwards, we always, or I always make sure that we have resistance and defense. So, for example, even let's say the first time a new guy learns a rear naked choke, maybe let's do positional sparring. You got full back control and you just try to finish your rear naked choke, and the other guy has to defend. And maybe if he is way more experienced, maybe I tell him here, stay, maybe give him enough resistance that he can succeed maybe half of the time. And then if he made progress, and maybe say, okay, now take one hook out. So he has maybe only the knee hook in. And then he has to finish, maybe first get the hook in, then finish the choke. Then maybe we go back, but we still do like positional sparring in that position. So there's always a resistive element. Then maybe we go back more and say, okay, you start with a seat belt and now you have to get both hooks in first. But what I want to point out is there's never a class I do where the stuff I showed isn't then checked with a resistance or a resistive and combative element, because like you said, context is super important, and so is the defensive side, of course. Yeah, and maybe to shift the discussion like a little bit in a different direction, because I feel like we agree on much, then maybe we can make further progress. And I the way I see it is that in the end, you have to be really skillful. Every offensive action has to be defensive in some way, and every defensive action has to actually be offensive if you're skilled. What I mean by that is, if we again look back at historical sword fighting, which I find very interesting, for example, because you can learn a lot of stuff about tactics. Even the masters in these old manuscripts written in the Renaissance, they basically said the whole idea of defense and offense is kind of stupid if you play a game with a sharp weapon where one error can kill you. So they made sure that every guard you hold your sword, every cut, every thrust always had the defense in mind, that you don't open yourself up to a counter attack or a riposte. And on the other hand, they also recognize that on the defense, a pure evasive or parrying or blocking action is pretty stupid, because all you did was, like I said, reacting to an action without gaining anything. You just wasted basically your energy and his energy, but you didn't make any progress. So I think the real question, anybody who is interested in becoming a great athlete or grappler, is to always think about how can I incorporate the defense into my offense, or can I make my defense offensive, so to speak. And we always, I think boxing again is a great example. Most people in boxing learn right away, if you jab, that you protect your chin with your shoulder while jabbing and don't stick your head out. So there's always like, see, you can get countered, and be aware, protect yourself. And even in wrestling, or if we now take a look at grappling, it's the same thing. If I teach double legs, for example, and I'm not like, I think it's really backwards that many people today still in grappling say, don't shoot with your head outside, you just will get guillotined. That's like the greatest bullshit I ever heard. But you have to be aware that you can get guillotined, and you have to have proper positioning, proper head positioning, proper, maybe more importantly, proper drive in the right direction. So what I mean by that is, when shooting a double leg, you have to already be defensive solid. And that goes back to your point you said about being defensive solid opens up the attack, which I also agree on. And maybe more interestingly, that's maybe now something we can talk about, or you can say what you think about that, is how can we incorporate offense in our defense? So if we are like, this is obviously a bit jokingly, if we are the turtling Priit who is defending everything from all directions, left and right, for 3 minutes, how can we now shift this defense, or how can we make sure that we actually become offensive in the end? Because that should be the goal. And I mean, I have my own thoughts how one should go about, but the question is now how to make sure that students find offense in their defense. Have you any thoughts on that?
Yes. So actually, good question. So what I think, as a visual, I want to make people as bored as possible, or as safe as possible, so they start to get bored, and I want them to try attack. Because what I find, let's say I've done a little bit boxing, let's say 6 months maybe, and I've done some karate and stuff when I was younger. But I find with striking arts, the hardest thing is to punch, because you're always afraid that you get punched back, because at the time is you're open, and then you kind of, you're stiffen up, or you're not relaxed, and so it's the hardest to try, because the loss is the biggest, because you get your teeth punched in. In jiu-jitsu, it's less, that you do something and then you end up in a bottom, or not always submission, but the punishing is not always a knockout, so to speak. So one way, like a really cartoonish way, would be that I want you to be safe enough to not be afraid to try. And so let's say if you do a turtle, and then you ask me, many people do like, but Preet, how do you pull guard from turtle? Then my usual answer is, because sometimes it's hard to talk about jiu-jitsu when somebody just writes you and wants to have a written answer about how do you pull guard. It's like, I haven't seen, first of all, how you do it. I haven't seen your turtle. I haven't seen your mindset. So it's kind of hard to answer that question. But I would usually say, like, take somebody lighter and just try. And if you really are saying that you are safe in turtle and you do kind of what I ask you to do and stuff, then try. And then try again. And then if somebody's lighter, lesser skill, and I probably say, like, you can pull it off. And if you're safe, you're not afraid of trying, because you don't actually have to try, and you can, like in quotations, you can win by just only shelling up and doing the turtle and not feel that loss feeling. And then, but it's like, I make you so bored in that sense, ideally, that you want to try, and in a very good sense of the word, you don't care losing so much because you know that you can, and you have proven to people that if you want to, you can be safe. And then if you try and lose and get stuck in a bottom or something, somebody takes your back, it's not as mentally exhausting, so to speak, and it doesn't influence your self-perception as much if you wouldn't have that defensive stuff. So, and I'm really like, this is kind of the overall idea that I have, that I want people to try and attack, and by giving them that carefree attitude to go and try now to attack, to try different, let's say escapes or whatever, underhook escapes, and now you have to be aware of the, darces coming at your way and people doing stuff. So your defense is right away in that attack, and you're aware, and your mental ability, you're mentally more relaxed because you know how deep your knowledge of defense goes. So you have many stages of darce defense, as example, and so you're more fearful with your underhook attacks. So that's kind of how I think about it. And I feel also those things happen naturally if the information is given to people. I've seen it on my site when people do like some side control stuff and transitional escapes, they just happen, and people end up in actually good positions. And I haven't taught them that in those drills. They just do it because they want to try, and things happen. And then, yes, then you can teach them how to do them better, but it's kind of hard to teach them how to do things better if they're afraid to try and they never do. So I rather let people do stuff, and then I can see what comes more natural to them, maybe what kind of escapes they're interested of. Surely I have to teach other escapes, so not only what they're randomly coming up, but I see how they do it. And now it's easy to go, oh, just post here more and, stretch here more. But the fear of fear goes away, and they're willing to try. So in that sense, I have an easier time, teaching them how to attack, and their attack is influenced also by the defense. And they can maybe go, because sometimes I say, let's say, if your defense is very infused with your attacking ability, then let's say if you do underhook escape, and they maybe defend and try to guillotine you while you do it, and then you pass the guard, and then it was a side control escape to actually guard pass to side control top, and you are more willing to do it if your defense is solid. Another way I would say for a first day beginner is use the underhook and then pull back to neutral, have a standing up option of technical stand up, and don't go further. But when this escape, underhooking and then getting out and creating a neutral, it also will get super boring actually quite quickly. And then I will say okay, now go deeper and try, and then they're going because they know they have the escaping ability already. So they're willing to go more further, and maybe they get guillotined, they get inspired by the defense. And then they know why the defense is necessary because they got caught. So it's a really nice dialogue, and it makes the learning and teaching stuff and escapes and attacks, it makes it easier to teach, and I can mold them while they go. So, and if I have a ready bundle of information of the defense, they don't have to suffer there and figure stuff out on their own. But I can just give them stuff and make them also progressively in that isolation drills and stuff, but they already have the answers that I can give them. So I don't know if that answered a little bit your question.
In some way, yes. I think the only problem is what you kind of pointed out is, I think, a healthy relationship with defense, but I think it's not implicit in focusing on defense, because I think it has a lot to do with mindset. Because if I think it can go both ways. If you are really defensively solid, you can think, I can try my offense, like you said, I can give it a shot because I'm confident that I will not just lose. But on the other hand, if you're really confident in your defense, many people also know don't have an incentive to do something. What I mean by that is, first of all, we all have probably this guy in our club who just lays around in bottom, guard, side control, and just defends everything. And in the end, thinks he's the winner because he didn't get submitted. And even many prominent people in Jiu-Jitsu kind of promote this stuff, not saying any names. And I think that's really a bad way to go about defense, but it also comes because you are defensively good. Because if you aren't defensively good, you just don't lay around on bottom. On the other hand, yeah.
Sorry. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
No. Yeah, but on the other hand, you're absolutely right. You can use it to be offensive, but it's a thing of mindset, and the thing that's my different problem with defense is, of course, I teach defense, and I think it's important that we teach defense 100%. But here's just something to think about, because that's something I think about a lot. If your defense sucks, you're super afraid to don't be in these positions. And also, we see that in MMA, if somebody is bad on bottom, for some reason, if they're good, they rarely are on bottom because they find ways to scramble. They explode out. They are like, fuck, this is my hell. I have to avoid this like crazy. On the other hand, there are people who think, well, my defense is solid, and they just accept the takedown, for example, because they think, well, I can survive. And I think a little bit of fear isn't always a bad thing. And we even see that at the highest level. We see like some of the greatest jiu-jitsu players of all times almost never were on defense and always never had to be on defense. And if we rarely see them in defense, they actually don't look that good. But for some reason, they have such an offensive mindset and such a fear that they find a way to never get in these positions. And that's also a kind of defense. If you are able to never get into the positions, completely avoiding them, which is probably maybe even the most important form of defense. Okay.
So we actually nice. We're talking about different ideals. Like I said, make people bored, super defense, and then it's easy. It's one way of easier to make them start to attack themselves and count on that they will. And I would agree that we can, because it will get to be very comfortable for them to just avoid. And that's like a rabbit hole I'm in, because I'm getting good at this. And so this is my comfort zone. And to start to back to attack, you have no idea how much brain power it takes to just like, okay, now I have to attack. And my reflexes and my ideas are totally different. So it's kind of fun that I feel it in my case, because I don't mind, because I do it consciously. And other extreme would be like what you said. I don't think you meant it this way, but I would take it that far, is not teaching defense at all, let's say, to somebody that learns to box, and create that fear in them that if you don't attack, you will get knocked out. So they're forced to develop that strength and ability and will to just go forward and just go punch. So I think that those both extremes are bad, because one gets you maybe knocked out because you have to just over punch somebody and you can't stop because you're afraid, but you will definitely develop the skill to go forward and mental ability to do that. And then other extreme would be only defending and then counting that people will somehow attack in the future. But also I would guess that creates people that are mostly passive. And I don't think I can create, those attacking people through that method. So I think overall, how I usually teach in seminars and stuff is people, we will get to our comfort zone super fast. And it's always a goddamn struggle. And it's so easy to find, let's say I'm in comfort zone with my defense. I'm figuring stuff out. So I'm kind of pushing my comfort zone to get bigger because of different attacks. I want to find out. I can just keep it where I am and then just play that game forever. But, you know, I have different agenda. Also, you know, I think in some, with a mental model podcast, I talked about when people come to jiu-jitsu class, you know, it's overcoming some fears, and you come and you come out of your comfort zone. But then if people would allow you, and okay, you have a choice. Would you learn, you know, the warm-up technique part? And if they would given the choice that you can stop the class now, or you can go half an hour sparring also in the end of the class. Actually, I've seen many people leave in certain stage, and they if they're not comfortable with sparring, and they actually go, and some clubs have had a problem with that if it's a 1 hour class and a bonus is a sparring and they don't have to stay, and people leave. And then it's like they're getting so comfortable, they overcame themselves by coming to jiu-jitsu, learning new thing. It was a fear, now they're good and rolling again. And if there's no push, they're again not taking that step. So there has to be outside motivator that you have to spar, or we have to make sparring, let's say, comfortable, and situational sparring, some rules. And so they're introduced, and they get and their fear is, you know, not justified in the end, and they enjoy sparring. So I find with when I teach seminars is I have to overwrite people's reflexes. And because when I teach those pandas and turtles and stuff, they get comfortable. So then I do drills that will go like, okay, now it's a 10. Now the rule is you have if I say escape, you have a 10-second window to try something, not right away, but 10-second window. And okay, safe, so you can move around, keep everything tight, kill all the attacks, super annoying. And then escape, do something. So this is them, I'm trying to push. And then also, you know, attacker has to let them do something. And if they're already really good at those things, they can, you know, progressively make it harder and introduce some failures into the equation also. But I feel like I have to introduce and overwrite their software to make them good, to make them comfortable of escaping, and then it becomes natural, and then everything is right again. So I cannot trust that people act, correctly themselves, and they always tend to go back to comfort zone and rather not do it. And then always there's some freaks that will push the boundaries anyway. But I feel like most people will not be those people, so that's the answer of, you know, to that problem that also I have, or I have seen in with all the defensive stuff.
Mm. Yeah, like I said, it's more like a thought experiment for me. It's not something I wouldn't encourage any coach to say don't teach certain defensive from certain positions. But I always found it interesting just to think about if you really feel like the bottom position, and that's a bit of my criticism on jiu-jitsu maybe. If you really feel like the bottom position is bad, and you actually accept that you should be fearful about it, then your chances of actually landing in bottom position, in my opinion, are way, way, way diminished compared to somebody who says, well, if I'm on bottom, I have the best guard of my class, who cares? And that's a bit, like you said, we have to create an incentive for people to just accept their defensive state, but to somehow progress into better positions. And I think one way I like to do it is it's also interesting what you said, that if sparring or rolling is like optional, that people leave. And that's why actually in my classes there isn't a real distinction between rolling and drilling. It's more like a gradual increase. You start off really maybe technique drilly, but then it gets more and more progressive. So, for example, I like to do a lot of games. Let's say we practice the panda position. What I like to do is, for example, create 2 games out of it. Like game 1 would be one guy is on bottom in panda, and the other guy has to get the back, and the other guy has to defend maybe. And then in this way, the offensive guy learns to attack, the defensive guy learns to defend. But then I maybe do the second game after and say, okay, now the top guy, I mean, you are on top, you don't have to do anything, you're winning, but the bottom guy should now progress and get out of panda into something better. So I give them a clear goal, like you only win if you move out of panda, maybe to standing or maybe even get a single or a takedown. That would be even better. And then, of course, maybe a third game, maybe you could say, okay, now you do both. It's 0-0. Top guy scores a point if he gets back control, for example. Bottom guy scores a point if he goes out. And if maybe, let's say, after 1 or 2 minutes, nobody scored, well, it's a tie. And that's maybe in line with what you mean by we have to, as coaches, maybe consciously override the comfort zone of people and kind of give them an incentive or force them to do something. And that's why I think actually constraints, rules, and can actually be very beneficial to practice.
Yeah. Yes, I agree that we talked about the same thing. With just one idea I still had, you said something about beginners training submissions and you introduced the defense. What I just want to add, that let's say if 2 beginners train, like you mentioned, let's say throwing a jab and somebody will pad the punch. Padding the jab will also take time, and it's not perfect, and you will get also hit in the face. There's drills to make it better, but it's still the right thing to do, and it takes time to get good. So but in boxing also the defenses really know what is the best defense, so to speak. So it's if somebody would do like a outside to inside karate block, and you would also do this then I hope sparring will weed out technique out. So I think in jiu-jitsu we have those outside to inside blocks, like still in reaction table. That if somebody, let's say, does a back escape, I want those, even let's say first month or first couple of months beginners, they would still do the right reaction, so to speak. Or there's more, I guess. There's not only one. Let's say if somebody gets a seat belt, that which way to start to turn or which way to actually turn, what is the body mechanics. So they still will, even the like barely would mimic what they have to get good at, because some defenses, what comes against, the seat belts and stuff, I would disagree that they're not the best one to do, but they still exist. So my goal would be that I really want to narrow it down, that what are the directions, and even the beginners can do right away the right things, and attacker starts from the in that sense day one to deal with the right directions, and then the just defender gets more better. But I find that sometimes the reactions are not so good, and then you spend time getting good at them, and then then they stop working, and then you have to do something else. So I'm really afraid of that myself. I don't want to go through that struggle. I think it's sometimes necessary to weed out stuff, but I will find it very exhausting for other people that want to get good in jiu-jitsu, that they would do something that will not work in the end. So, and I think in defensively, we have things in jiu-jitsu that we should not do, but I've seen it still done. And I would like that they would be, in that sense, weeded out, that we only have the proper reactions. There's a amount of them, and we deal them and just make them better. And then we learn right away the, so to speak, more correct ways. But I think that right now the water is a little bit muddy, that there's other stuff in it also that's not good. But I've seen it also when I roll with people and I see their reactions. And if I block a hip, they don't turn away because they're never taught. And also your nice example was a head outside, single, that people just say don't do it. And I agree that it's super weird that I think it, in a way, it makes sense because yes, you want to eliminate the threat of getting submitted, doing that takedown. And if other version, single inside, head inside, is more safer, so why not get good in this, and then spend all your time there. But single outside clearly is also awesome takedown. But some take it really like a cut off version, like, no, let's not teach it at all. It's like Jiu-Jitsu is full of those things that just irritate me, like to the bone marrow, in that sense, that don't turn your back. That's the same thing. Don't do head outside like a single leg. It's like, no, you can turn your back, but then you have to know what to do and how to do it, and it's totally fine. And if you cut this away, that you don't do outside head single legs, then as a defender, you are not ready for those attacks, and your game will be very, very inefficient. And then somebody comes and does the head outside single, your guillotine will be shit because you never done it against outside head single, and then you never did it because everybody taught you this was bad. And I think those kind of cutoffs, like we see in Jiu-Jitsu, don't turn your back, and like all those mantras have done a great disservice to our sport. And this side of Jiu-Jitsu, that turning away, sitting up, turtling, and it's really like a even, I would say, a crimely or something understudied. And so I really hope that more people will see that and start to study it, because I'm not saying clearly it's the best ever and you have to always turn back, but you need those opposites, because turning your back and then shrimping back in actually makes your shrimp better. So that's kind of my point. And I think we agree on here also that you just have to know how to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's also the whole point I'm trying to make with all my let's say learning stuff. It's like you said, people want a black and white easy answer, like do this and don't do that. And I think that's really not only stupid and wrong, but also dangerous in many ways, this kind of black and white thinking. And that's also why I'm critiquing a lot this whole notion of like a coach, or even worse, like great sensei guy telling you, do these techniques, don't do these techniques, learn these techniques, and you're good. And I think the whole point I'm trying to make basically with my page is it takes skill, and skill is not black and white. It's like you have to understand from experience when something is good, when it's not good, when you can shoot with your head on the outside, when you shouldn't. It's like, that's also, I like what you said when people ask you how to pull guard from turtle, and you say, I can give you an answer per personal message. It's like I'm in a similar position. I frequently get asked stuff like, should I do that? And I rarely can give any good answer, because that's not what beginners want to hear, but it depends. It depends on so much. And that's where, in my opinion, true skill and mastery comes into play. If you have like the experience to understand, maybe more so even internally than explicitly, when something is the black side of the coin or the white side. And this clear cuts thinking, black white, you and I guess me too, critique is still very, very prevalent in especially Jiu-Jitsu, I guess, more so than in more Western combat sports.
And also, I agree with you, but I don't know if I'm right about that. But also, I think maybe it's education system or whatever, because people, they want always clear answer to stuff like, give me facts or something. But I don't know, life coaching advice. Life is a gray area, And if somebody asked me, like, what about turtle escapes? Well, have you tried yourself many times? And I'm also with the drills and stuff, the way I do it, I try to promote this I don't know answer, because somebody asked me, even if I know the answer, sometimes I tell them like, I don't know exactly or something, that I try to promote also that I don't know the answers, and it depends on timing, and it's actually accurate to say that I don't know. It's not that I don't know the technique maybe, but there's always a rhythm and everything to the things. And I like to promote that also, that people will not ask those questions. But I don't know if I can say it's an education system problem, that the way we're not taught in the schools to go after answers and do not always wait for a straight answer to things. Then we have to study and find answers, and then the discussion with a teacher that, this and that. And I know some areas we can have more discussions and some are more strict, but it's still like going after things. And I feel I don't think it's right to say that's full education, but a little bit I feel it's that people do not actually think that, I can try myself, and why I'm not taking a 30 kilo lighter somebody and try and then find out, and then I have my opinion, and then I can ask actually a better question. So be like a scientist, explore, and that's okay. That's okay to not know. And I feel always like that the people have that fear of not knowing, and then they want to that straight answer. So that's why also on my site, I'm actually doing public experiments, that when I change my mind a couple of times after each video, because I don't know, somebody asked me actually on the site, what about back triangle escapes? Like somebody does from back control, does the back triangle, like Danaher, he posted the Danaher video. Preet, what do you do when you actually it's fully locked and the arm is pulled over the head? I was like, I don't know, but I want to have your opinion. And so I was like, I'm actually doing experiments now, and I'm actually happy that I would say, not fully figured out, but we have a pretty good idea. And the defense correlates with anaconda escapes and other stuff but I need that question, and I'm publicly putting out information where I'm exploring and even changing my mind after a second video that now we know more. So I'm trying to also promote that I don't know idea, that guys go after it and then just have a discussion, and truth will come out if you just try enough, that you will start to see certain patterns. And also just one thing, you had a really interesting thought that about high level guys, they're always attacking, and then when they're defending, and it's like berserk mode, they're afraid to be there, and then they do a lot of scrambles. I think in that sense, yes, it happens. I think they're sometimes naturally doing the right things, and I study usually them and trying to systemize it, why it worked. But in many cases, I don't know if it's even, like if good guys put in a bad position and then they scramble until they get out. But I think there's also, if I say enough evidence, I don't know if it's 50-50 or do they escape most times, and then, but I don't think it's like 10% they lose. I've seen good guys with good guard, they get passed and the level drops, like I'm not saying many belt levels, but the level drops, and the significance of their moves or articulation of their moves and how well they do the guard, switching grips left and right, and they have all figured out. And then it becomes like a weird spazzy, just let's see what works, against somebody that's on the top and whose game is figured out to the letter, because they've been on a top, and you like doing some not systematic stuff. Sometimes you get out, but many times I've seen good guys lose. And then it's very strange to see. And, there's also good things happening there. And then I try to figure out what I got out. But the level difference will be enormous, because top guys usually better thought out their game than the bottom person. But I also, I agree with you, the spazziness of not accepting the bottom position. And that's the attitude. Yeah, we can train with a certain environment, that you cannot have that. Christian Graugart had a really interesting kids game, that a kids competition team that he said was pretty successful. And the only thing I think what they said was doing like some wrestling drills, that they never can put their back on a mat. Mm-hmm. And what happened, what happened during the years is like when they met other kids, it was impossible to keep them down, and they scrambled, and most kids weren't used to that, and they fought always for top, and then they kind of got a lot of medals because it was an attitude issue that they got conditioned for this kind of, fight. So it is trainable, I think. And also, people cannot get tired. So it has to be trained in that sense because it takes energy. So I just wanted to put like those thoughts also there that's what we see, and, we can use that also.
Yeah, I think that's all very, very nice and good points. And just like a quick anecdote, I actually use the same game too a lot. Like you're not allowed to put your back on the mat. I even do it sometimes in guard because I feel like, again, like you said, life is a gray area. Most of the times, I guess, being flat on your back is bad anyways, even if you play guard. So I even like the following game. You start from half guard maybe, and the bottom guy has to submit or maybe get up or sweep. But if his back gets on the mat for 3 seconds, he loses. So he always learns to get the right angle to never be flatted out. And yes, so like you said, I love these kind of environments to create them artificially. But again, it's never like a black and white, never do it. It's like in this context we are practicing now, you have certain rules and constraints and you practice the skill. But at the same time, maybe 2 weeks later, you have a different game where it's maybe not encouraged, but again, it's allowed or necessary to get your back flat on the mat. And that's very important, I think, that students and coaches in Jiu-Jitsu, but in every sport, combat sport, have to learn it's not black and white. It's a gray area. And I think we kind of did a good job in pointing that out, because we started off a little bit controversially by saying I'm the offense guy, you're the defense guy, but it seems like we kind of converged to a point where we say offense and defense, it's basically the same sides of two sides of the same coin, and it's really not black and white but gray. And I think that's maybe a good conclusion to all of this, that you should try to find in your own training, maybe focus on the things that are gray, not black. Like I said, for example, or you also say that a lot, an underhook on one side can act as defensive and offense, especially in the standing position. The underhook is a great setup for your attacks, but it's also a great defense on that side to not get attacked on. And these are the moves and ideas I think we as students of the game should study deeply, the kind of skills that take care of offense and defense at the same time at a very profound level.
Yeah, and also I think, what is your background in wrestling? Because you comment a lot of stuff in wrestling. What is...
So I actually come from judo, and I still coach judo in a judo club. Okay. Because wrestling isn't really big in Germany. It's a very small sport in Germany. And eventually I transitioned, or not transitioned, I added, I started doing jiu-jitsu, and then I felt like, coming from judo, which is heavy on stand-up grappling, I felt like jiu-jitsu was missing a lot of stuff. And I also kind of got bored in wearing the gi, because I basically wear the gi since I'm 5 years old. And so I became much more interested in no-gi grappling. And so I was happy enough to be in a club where the coach quickly realized that I have an extensive background in grappling. And he kind of let me do my own stuff and research. And I quickly, got in charge of a lot of the no-gi grappling training in our club. And so I basically always studied wrestling personally. I watched tons of clips, especially folk style wrestling. Then I incorporated it in my game, and it was very successful for me. I mean, it helps that I basically grew up doing grappling all my life, so I have to admit that a lot of stuff I see is very easy for me to try myself. But eventually I developed kind of, I feel like obviously every pure freestyle wrestler would wreck me, but for no-gi grappling and jiu-jitsu standards, I guess I developed a pretty good wrestling game and understanding just by watching a lot of stuff, wrestling, and figuring it out for myself in the context of submission grappling.
Okay. And just to, we're near the finish. I guess one thing also I would say, the thought I had is why I love defense, in that sense that, I'm not trying to win that debate, but I'm just, but it's just ideal thought I have. It's like, I think it's correct to say in an old samurai way, there's a legend that when I started karate, there was at least my coach told me, or what I read, I don't know if they're true or not. And, two samurais comes and they both kneel towards each other, let's say some distance apart. And then one stands up and leaves because he was defeated. So my goal with those things are, if there's a fight and if you know that there's no way you can beat that guy, like, let's say in my mind, I would say defense is so solid, you just don't see a way to beat him, then you lost the fight. That doesn't matter if he can attack, he can, literally beat you. So attacking is there, but if you don't see any way, so I think that's morally more destroying in that sense. And I wanted to point out also, I think in wrestling, I don't think there's many people in wrestling that do the defensive part. I think one is Kyle Drake, I think, yeah?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
That's a very counter wrestler. And one is, I always forget his name, I'm sorry about that, the Italian guy that also very counter wrestling. Yeah.
Frank Chamizo,
so,
yeah.
Those guys are like, for me, I enjoy immensely how they just, I know that they're always in a back feet because they're like always defending, and they could maybe be better if they would attack more forward, but they're always in those scrambles that they tend to win. And that knowledge, least, I'm not saying they should have to, and that's the best style, but that knowledge that is exposed, through those scramblings and how they defend, I find for myself, even for jiu-jitsu, it's so valuable because many times we don't see those things. We don't see a nice, long, like scientific scrambles. Let's see that it's, postures and timing and everything based. We just sometimes see a double leg and then somebody bellies out and then it's okay, it's gone. But I really enjoy the Drake and also the other guys, the scrambles. And I wish there were more information about those guys. The same, I would wish that there would be more tellers guys in a high level, that we would see different kind of executions of total information, not only tellers proving it. So that's why in my secret, mind, I would try to create those people that we would actually get more evidence and we'll see how it all works, and people would see how it all works. So that's my overall kind of helping the universe kind of plan. But but I think we had a nice conclusion, after this 1 hour and 30 minutes talk.
Yeah.
Well,
I probably don't have too much to add then myself. I would like to have just one question then for both of you guys before you go. Otherwise, the only thing I can add, being an Australian, is some sporting maxims like offense wins games, but defense wins championships. And of course, offense is the best form of defense. So that wraps up my thoughts on the topic. But just one question each I'd like to ask, and one is first I'll go to Andy, which is just the idea with going back to the very beginning with the sword and the shield, and defense and the shield being the driving force behind the evolution of offense. If we are focused on getting students to learn techniques intuitively, would it not be better for them to learn the offense by setting a base posture of defense and then basing the rules of the game around attacking, as they have to be driven by that, the highest form of defense? I know we can add resistance to drills, but how good is resistance if it's incorrect resistance?
So if I understand you correctly, that we start off, you mean that we start off by creating, so to speak, a solid defensive posture, we then can better attack, if I'm correct. Okay.
Would that help them learn the offense intuitively?
My problem with that is that, in my opinion, defense in itself is not intentional. It has absolutely, it's directionless. It has no sense outside, or no meaning in isolation, because that's my problem with defense. It's like an attack has like an aim. It's like I have purpose. I want to do X, but the purpose of the defense, in my opinion, like the SWOT and sheet, will always be to respond to the purposeful attack of somebody else. And I mean, I know that you are very familiar with my ideas on intuition and human movement, and I mean, we discussed it on your podcast. And I feel like intention and direction is something that is intrinsic to human movement, and we organize ourselves, our movements, to achieve a purposeful and intentional goal, so to speak. And I think that's why we cannot get students to form a great defensive posture, because they lack the purpose behind the posture, and hence will not be able to harness the power of, let's say, auto-regulation and self-organization, the stuff you don't see right away in their movements. And that's why I think we have to start off with purpose in movement, and usually offensive action is way more purposefully in itself, and defensive action can only be understood with offensive action in mind.
Beautiful, very, very reasonable. And yeah, so I guess that intention just being one of the most important things there, and the attacking intention being the most important. Thanks, Andy. And Preet, I'll finish off with one question to you, and I'll actually might lead it with a quote from Sun Tzu. So we'll go from The Art of War. Yeah, I know. Which is that attack is the secret of defense. Defense is the planning of an attack. And my thoughts on that would be, when we're teaching students defense, should we not be immediately teaching them to re-attack and to turn those defensive situations or moves immediately into an offensive opportunity?
My answer is yes, but I think with Andrea's question, I don't think we totally disagree, but that was the first time when he said something I would a little bit disagree with. And it came in the end of our podcast. But I think in the end, we tend to, if we really would talk about it, I think we would agree. But that's the first time I felt that I would a little bit disagree what he said. Anyway, so to answer your question, yes, I would say that. So that's what the critique it's been towards my work, that I'm making people passive, and people are posting, also writing me comments that, oh, I survived, and and then not in a bad way, bragging about it, and then people are calling them out. Oh, if you feel so safe, why don't you attack back? Then it's not the point of just do nothing. And then just one other thing I would add, my friend Alex said also why what I do feels so appealing to people, because the psychology of not losing, and people would rather not lose than win. So it's, there's usually the money stuff that you would rather not lose 100 than win 100. So I'm aware of that problem that I'm also dealing with. And of course, the point is to right away build the counterattack and to get back to the attacking cycle. That's the goal. And what I find in my gym, that because we're dealing with such a strong defensive idea, that actually those higher levels are really intrigued and fighting me back and always trying to prove me wrong. And we also see, when I remember a couple of people trained some isolation drills, basically what they did was the Danaher last DVD, because the Danaher last DVD is mostly about, how to get from side control right away to some attacking position of new wave or something. But I was like, I monitored them, and from different escapes right away, X guard sweeps back, and they happened naturally. So yes, I agreed with you that this should be the goal. And I've seen also, when people have enough knowledge about Jiu-Jitsu, that it had, at least in those people, and I think in some other people cases that's in my gym, I've seen it happen naturally. And maybe I've said you can do that and, push them a little bit, but I don't have to really work hard on that it would happen. It seems that base that I've built is good enough that they can choose, and it's all about how much they know about attacking. So different positions would make sense to them, X guard, slash guard, different guards and stuff. So I eventually agree that it is about attacking, and I enjoy that the attacking cycle, and everything wins. And so yes. That's yes.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. Well, I mean, that is interesting that there's just that one point that you said you disagree on. Maybe, I think Andy, if you've still got about 10 minutes, maybe I could give the last word on this matter then to Priit, if he wants to speak to that. Yes. And, in the interest of Andy going first for offense, maybe it's good to have Priit going last in the name of defense.
Yeah. So my point being, I think it's a little bit like a play with words, and so it's really interesting that you made me think about directions and stuff, and attack as a direction and defense hasn't, and so it's an interesting thought, and I will not try to answer those things. I would think about it, and it's definitely has been for me a really different podcast than I had previous, and I really appreciate it. So one thing I would add is, I think if I understood you right, I think defense can have intent. If you start to teach people, seatbelt back takes, would you show them, it's a rhetorical question in that sense, would you show them like elbows on a mat turtle and they will get the, seatbelt, and then you teach from there back takes? Or it doesn't take, let's say it takes me 20 seconds to show people, like a beginner, even on first day, that, knees wide, seal feet, elbows close to the hip, and head on a mat. And we can have games that top guy has to a little bit push and pull, and bottom guy has to lose certain progressive drills, that they have a good posture to work with that resembles the awesome one that we know. And it's already a same structure that they start to build their attack against, that they will have to meet in a future roles. But I will find that what I usually also find, that people are doing elbows on a mat, seatbelts, and then they meet a good turtle, and they're like, oh shit, what do I do with that now? So I feel there's a good way that I don't think I can teach a beginner like a good hawking that's right away good hawking, and I don't think it's worth my time to make them good at that at first, because I clearly think also that submissions are fun and need to be taught first. But I can introduce them good enough, like an idea about that, what would hawking do, and maybe overall pressure even for a first day person. And then if we have like a kimura grip, and then we have to step over the head and do the kimura, the hawking posture kind of, the head kind of is away and you have to trap the head, and it's a skill to have. So we can already start to build good stuff, and bottom guy just gets better by time, and top guy just gets better. I think the top guy gets the information for them is more precise maybe, and the beginner stages of Jiu-Jitsu deals more with that to make them really good. But to introduce right away the good idea what the defender has to do. So I only think, I also think that we agree with this with Andreas, but I think in that sense, I don't think we do it today, but I would like to think that defense in that sense has certain direction also, that has an intent that right away we have ideas that how to do in bottom, and that it's some way that's intent and direction towards attacks that we have to withstand coming from top. So that's meaning of the intent and direction, and but not going super deep with very many defensive ideas. But also I would say in even a couple of first months I can point them here, poke them there a little bit, and make it hawking even better. Even not much spending on it, but just guide them that the attacker could have more fun time and learn the right skills that actually, take a couple of years to get better at. So that was the stuff I felt I disagreed, but I think I felt that it's more like a words play, and it's something was not said, but it was actually meant maybe this way what I said. So.
Well, I think maybe
it's like a good cliffhanger.
It's a good cliffhanger, exactly. Maybe that can be settled in round 2, Andy. If we'll see what all the feedback.
But then again, we are both the first 4-time guests. I mean, I want to be the first at somebody in your podcast. So maybe I'm the first 5th time guest. Then I don't know.
Andres,
yes.
But I think you also would. I don't think we disagree on this. That I think what you said was good, but I just wanted to add that direction and stuff that beginning stuff can have intent, but then I guess it's more like a philosophical, like a discussion about things. But do you overall disagree with what I said about?
I agree that defensive action can have intent, and actually I agree that it should or must have intent in order for it to be good and be functional. But I feel, and without starting another discussion, is that the intent always goes back to defining the offense first. But what I mean by that is try to explain somebody or even practice hawking without telling them what a choke is.
Yeah, I know. So in that sense, I agree with you that if I would teach people beginning the kimuras and stuff, and so I can introduce them the idea what the good thing would look when playing bottom, so the top guy could have a better understanding what they're fighting against. So I think I don't know how to say it right now better, but I think you understand my meaning that it's a little bit good to show bottom what they have to do, but without clear understanding what the top guy actually does, the bottom guy, it's hard to understand for them. But it's necessary for a top guy that the bottom guy knows a bit.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that was my point, kind of. In that sense, it kind of have a little bit intent and direction that it helps actually both. Anyway, yeah. So that, I don't know if it's a topic for another podcast, but I think I just wanted to clear that out a little bit.
Could be. We'll see what the what all the feedback is if people are on team offense or
that's another
team
topic
defense.
for another podcast. Feedback, because I think actually Priit and me could probably talk 2 hours about feedback alone.
Well, yeah. I would be very happy to host that and listen to that conversation and again, because I got to say this has been an absolute pleasure for me to listen to. And yeah, I'd be more than happy to hear you guys talk about feedback as well, because it's I'm really appreciative for you guys to have this conversation and allow me to listen in and put my 2 cents in. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to both you guys. It's been really great.
Yes, it has been actually very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Sonny, for hosting us, for letting us waste your precious time for us having our discussion here, because we are not having a podcast ourselves. Yeah, I'm always happy to talk to you, or to Priit in that case, and very thankful that you gave us a platform to actually have this discussion on. Thanks a lot, mate.
Pleasure's all mine, guys. So wrapping up, Andy, if people want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly just on Instagram. My page is called School of Grappling, everything written together. Nobody has time for underscores or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, maybe if people don't know me, I started off by talking about statistics in grappling, so about evidence and stuff. But then I quickly shifted more to the, in my opinion, extremely complicated but interesting topic of how we learn and should teach grappling or movement in general. And I'm actually right now working on a book on that matter, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation about teaching, especially combat sports or especially traditional martial arts. And I'm working right now on a book which hopefully will debunk all of this nonsense and will make a hopefully very coherent argument why we have to change a few things about we think about learning and teaching. And that's what I meant in the beginning, that we agree. And I already see Priit, for example, is also kind of in line in that direction, in changing a lot of methodology when it comes to teaching and learning. Yeah. So if you're interested in that, you can follow me and maybe read my book once it is out, but it will probably take a lot of time for me, since I'm mostly doing this on my side as a side project. Yes.
Yeah, I'll be getting a copy of that straight away. I'll greatly look forward to that. And you also started a page on philosophy as well, if you wanted to. Grappling with the World, was it?
Yeah, grappling with the world. It's not really philosophy. It's more like, let's say, School of Grappling for me, it should be just a grappling page, because that's how I intended it. But I realized that the weird philosopher I am, or wannabe philosopher, I kind of misused my grappling page a lot for sharing my weird ideas in my stories. So I decided to just keep it separate and make a, let's say, personal account, where if people are interested in some more philosophical or scientific ideas, they can follow me on grappling_with_the_world, where I talk about stuff that is not just grappling related. But that's more like really personal page, not so much
Sure.
compared to grappling. Yeah.
Sure thing. No, good stuff. And Preet, how do people get a hold of you?
Facebook is ģitzvulkan Priit Mihkelson, and then Instagram just ģitzvulkan, and I guess yeah. And I'm a lot of time spending a lot of time on my defensive BJJ site, interacting. So it's, if you're there, then definitely people can reach me. But I think that's the one social media, Facebook, Instagram, like usual, and then my own site, and that should be enough to get in contact or see what I am about, and if you're interested.
Yeah, and of course the instructionals up on BJJ Fanatics.
Oh yeah, that too. Yes.
Good stuff. Well, I think that wraps this up then, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. We really, really appreciate it, and yeah, thank you guys very much for having this debate.
Awesome.
Thanks. See ya.
See you
guys.
Talk to you.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Until next time, you can visit sonnybrown.net to find out more ways to break it down.